Welcome to Techies Reproductive Justice, the podcast, a place for technologists and community organizers to learn from each other. In this podcast, we'll explore security tips and operations security for organizers, how to help keep our movement safe online, the intersections and history of technology, reproductive justice, and other types of movement work, what organizing in the digital age looks like, and the pros and cons of technology and organizing. I'm your co-host, Azamare.
And I'm your co-host, Lou. On today's episode, we'll be talking with Nidhi from I Need an A. Nidhi is a web engineer, designer, and filmmaker. In college, she double majored in mathematics and film, and shortly after, she moved to the Bay Area to work in education partnerships at Khan Academy. Feeling unfocused in her career and wanting to develop hard skills that could solve problems, Nidhi decided to take the plunge and try her hand at coding. She became a software engineer and eventually a technical lead for a marketing agency. Feeling frustrated with not having her values align with what she did on a daily basis, she took the leap and quit her full-time job to pursue more meaningful work. She currently works at ineedana.com as a software engineer and occasional designer.
Before we get into our interview, it's time for T for RJ's media recommendations of the week, your spot for all things reproductive justice, social justice, and tech media recommendations. This week, we want to highlight glitch feminism, which I recommend in our conversation. Author Legacy Russell defines glitch feminism as a cultural movement that has the goal of using the internet as a means of resisting the hegemony of the corporeal, aka using technology to fight against the policing of a racialized and gendered body. It's the perfect moment for more radical manifestos, and glitch feminism does just that. Now let's get into the episode.
Okay, well, so glad that you're here, Nidhi. Thank you so much for giving us the time to chat. I'd love to just start off by hearing you describe your work and what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a software engineer at ineedana.com, and if you don't know them, we provide resources for pretty much if you're wanting to get an abortion, we will give you some type of path for it. So clinics, support organizations, and even travel. We're trying to get a little more into that because, people in restricted states like me, I'm in Texas. So yeah, I do mostly front-end development, but sometimes do design tasks, sometimes do back-end. We are a small, scrappy team, so I kind of like helping out in a lot of different ways. And outside of that, I also do filmmaking. So I just recently finished an animated short. And yeah, so kind of working on this work has also given me the flexibility to work on a lot of different types of things I'm interested in as well.
That's so cool. I didn't know that about the animation work. Excited to check that out.
Yeah. I'll share it with y'all.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes if people want to check it out. Just getting into the next question, how do your identities and your personal history shape the work you do?
Yeah, I feel like this is such a complex question because if you think about what your identity is, it's like 1,000 different things. When I was younger, I definitely started noticing how my family grew up, and I'm raised in an Indian American culture. And in my family in India, I definitely saw how women were treated differently. Both my grandmothers were married really young. One was 12 when she was married and one was 15. So very young. And then even my mother, she was married at 19 and she really didn't want to be. So it's I was noticing just how their agency was limited because of just societal norms. And I think that definitely made me a feminist at a very young age, just seeing those things. And my older sister also, I remember she was reading The Feminine Mystique when she was in high school. And that was something she was reading through school in Texas, which is kind of wild if I think about it now. I think she also became very emboldened by this. So I think definitely growing up as a woman changed my view on things. And I could probably talk about this for a long time. But I think also something that I feel has impacted me is I grew up and became very depressed over time. And I struggled with that for like years, like even into my 20s. And it was just like not a thing that was talked about, but I think it also allowed me to empathize with other people in different ways. And that definitely affects the work I do too, is like you have to like understand that people are coming from so many different viewpoints. And even things like your body chemistry can change the way you think about things.
I think that's a really important aspect of being in this work is being able to empathize with people. And also, I want to go back to what you were talking about, like immigrant experiences. I feel like there's so many parallels because my family is Nigerian American, and you were talking about like some of the stuff about agency and just like how that really informed you. Just really relating to that, and especially with like the mental health thing not being talked about either.
Thanks for sharing that. Just like, yeah, relatable about the mental health stuff for sure. And the way that really makes you realize like people are coming from really different places, and I'm definitely never going to understand someone else's experience completely because what's going on inside we can never fully know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some of that also shaped me politically, because if I'm thinking about even how our structure is set up now, is that you're kind of like on your own for the most part, unless you have either a family that was very supportive or friends that are very supportive, something like that. You have to kind of forge your own community. Like nothing is built in. And the way even like our economic system is set up is that you have to work really hard, like work overtime, and that impacts your mental health as well, where if you're working all the time, you don't really end up seeing a point of living or finding your own purpose. So I think definitely like over time I became more and more anti-capitalist and just questioning these systems, which kind of has made me have a much different point of view than my family and some other people I grew up with.
I think it's so interesting too because I feel like a lot of immigrant cultures kind of are inherently anti-capitalist when the way it's like very emphasized, oh, you have to take care of your family, you have to do this and do that. So you would assume that they would also be anti-capitalist, but they're not. At least my family's not. I am, obviously, but it's just like weird because the values are there, but they just like don't actually, I feel like they think it means something else. I'm like, no, we practice this shit too.
Right. That is so true. Yeah, because I feel like you always hear of Asian cultures being a little more communal, or yeah, like other cultures as well being more communal. But at the same time, because if you come from a country that has a big wealth gap, then there's also this idea of like you have to struggle really hard in order to be the best or something, whatever the best is, and make a lot of money. It almost turns into this more individualized thing, at least with my family. I know that's not true for other like Indian families, but I totally agree. I feel like especially like people who have immigrated to the US, like there's that desire for money or something, or like desire for some type of like power that's more ingrained, and I feel like I had to like unlearn a lot of that.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I'm thinking about other ways that capitalism is so deeply entrenched in our culture. And I think about the tech industry as like such a good example of that. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about your journey into the tech world and how you ended up in doing movement tech, which is, sort of tries to break out of that capitalist driven tech model.
Yeah, sure. So I didn't originally think I would even be part of the tech industry in college. I double majored in like math and film, and there's like no clear path outside of that. So, I mean, my parents, of course, were like, why didn't you do medicine? Like, this seems more complicated. Like, there's no clear way for you to do anything. But after college, I worked at Khan Academy, which is like an education nonprofit. And that's actually where I met Becca as well. She was working there as a designer. And I was working more on like the education partnership side. So kind of working with a middle school in trying to do this blended learning pilot program there. Eventually the role changed, and I was also working on some graphic design, some filming donation videos and things like that. I definitely had a lack of focus, and I got inspired a lot by the engineers there who were trying to like solve unique problems, and I was interested in learning a little bit more about development because I had done a little coding in school. I didn't think that was for me, but I was like, maybe I'll try it again. So I took like a part-time coding class while I was at Khan Academy, and then decided to do like a full-time coding boot camp after. So after I did that, it definitely helped me at least learn what is possible and like what I need to learn. So after I did that, I worked at mostly like marketing agencies. So there were like tech adjacent marketing agencies. One was in-house at Google, or not in-house, it was like more of like a vendor for Google. So I worked primarily with Google's developer marketing team. And I think it's something I knew going in. Value-wise, I was not aligned with. It wasn't necessarily like oh, I'm so surprised by how Google works or something like that. It was more, I need to learn these skills in order to do something with them, because I also like had applied for things that I thought were more aligned to my values, but you also need experience in big tech for a lot of those. I feel like it's very hard to find social good tech jobs in general. They're also competitive. So while I was in those jobs, I like eventually got promoted to being a technical lead, and I was miserable. I thought, I was doing well at the job and things like that, but then I was like just like not happy with the work I was doing, especially during the time of COVID and the BLM protests and just all of these societal events that I'm like, I feel like I should help out with something else, like use these skills for something else. And so I finally just like decided I'm just going to quit my job and then try to find freelance work that I actually care about and am intrinsically motivated by, versus just continuing on this path of climbing some corporate ladder or something, because I felt like at this point I had some skill set, I could help out some other way. So I ended up quitting my job, and then I worked at a couple different places through freelance work, and then eventually Becca had posted, we have like a Khan Academy like alumni channel in Slack, and she like posted that she was looking for someone who mostly does like front end engineering, and so I reached out and then kind of have been working at I Need an A since then.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate your commitment to just knowing that it was soul sucking work and you needed to just get out of there and doing that, because that can be a really hard decision to make, that like leap of faith like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like in some ways it was a privileged position of being like, I have some like savings, I don't have children, I don't have like anyone like depending on me exactly financially, so like I could do that. So I felt like lucky to be able to.
Totally. And it's another way that like our individualist, capitalist, driven culture like prevents people from being able to pursue those values aligned jobs. Because if you did have kids, or if you didn't have that financial stability, and we don't have like a social safety net in that same way, like how would you ever be able to do that kind of thing? So it's all related.
Yeah, definitely. I remember even in our retreat that we had some discussions about, oh, why are there mostly white people in this room? Who has the privilege to work on things that matter to them?
Yeah, remembering the retreat, I actually don't remember who brought that up, but it was just like sitting in that moment, and I was like, oh yeah, me and Nidhi, I believe, at that time were the only non-white people in the room, but also everyone just like sitting with it and being like, yeah, not being uncomfortable to recognize their whiteness and their privilege. But going back to what you were saying about your journey through tech, I always like hearing people's just how they got into tech, because I feel like there's just not one way. People think there's like a traditional way, like going through school. As coming from someone who did go to school and like get a degree and then do this and do that, I honestly feel like it's really important to have different stories out there about how you can get into tech, because not everyone is able to get a degree, but there's still so many people who can solve the problems. They're like just as smart. They just might not have the resources, but it's still like possible for you to break in. So I guess relating to that, what advice do you have for people trying to break into the intersecting world of tech and social justice?
I think there are a lot of different paths you can take, but I totally agree with you. I think some people I've worked with did the more traditional path of getting a bachelor's degree in computer science and immediately working in tech after that. But I've also worked with people who were completely self-taught, not even in like a coding boot camp. There are a lot of resources online. I remember using Code Academy, and there's just like so many now. And you can learn a lot of the same stuff that you learn in college, paying for your education for free online. It might not be perfect. It might not be as like streamlined as like a university education, but it's definitely possible. And as far as getting a job in more social good tech, I think there are like a couple different ways. For me, I had kind of a hard time doing the thing where like I would always want to volunteer after work for things like Code for America. That was something that I kind of tried while I was at my full-time job working above 40 hours a week. And I just did not have the capacity to do that personally. But I know a lot of people do that, and they learn a lot and they get connections into that world a little more when they do that. So I would suggest for people who do have that ability to be on their computer as much as possible, you should definitely do that. Another option is, I quit my job. Another option is to quit your job. And I also just like cold emailed places. Like I remember cold emailing Software for Good, who actually like now works with T4RJ, which is cool. But I cold emailed them and didn't really hear back for months. Like I think I heard back being like, we don't really have any openings right now. But after a couple months, they were like, oh, we actually have an opening now. Would you be interested in interviewing? And that was just like from a cold email. Those organizations based in Minnesota and was doing a lot of Minnesota-based projects. So it was kind of cool to just reach out, see what happens, like kind of plant those seeds, and then you can find something. And another thing I've done is, so in Austin, we have this organization called Open Austin, and it's kind of like a civic tech group that works on multiple different projects. And so I joined them and then also saw that, oh, they had like a project that had a stipend. So I could also work on it like during the day. And that was cool as well. So I think a lot of cities, at least like mid-sized cities, have organizations like that involved with civic tech. And then that's kind of a place where you can get your foot in the door and figure out which projects interest you.
So honestly, a lot of good tips, especially for someone who did go to school and like was trying to figure out what I actually cared about in computer science. Because literally the way they teach you, I don't want to say it's all bullshit, but like it's I kind of feel like it is. I don't know if we'll edit that part out. It's just very like because it's just like there isn't any different diverging paths. Someone doing student organizing, like, oh, it would be cool to merge these things. They never like teach you, at least when you're doing a formal education, the different paths you can take tech. And I think that's the cool thing about self-learners or people who go into these community groups. Like you were saying, places like T4RJ too. T4RJ is literally how I got my job, because someone posted something in the T4RJ Slack. So yeah, I think those are all really great tips. And I'm hoping that some people can take those and just like, if they've been in a place where they're trying to get into social justice tech, they can take these tips and apply them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know you got your job through the T4RJ channel. That's great.
Yeah.
But I also feel like the way our education system is set up is where it's like, oh, what field are you interested in, rather than like, what problems do you want to solve in this world? And I feel like if you did that, then it's like you can learn a lot of different skills. There's a lot of overlap with even tech and film or whatever. Like, I feel like all of these things have a lot of overlap, and we just are taught like, oh, stay within this random arbitrary field we created versus looking at the world a little more holistically or something. Yeah.
I love that reframe of like, instead of what field I want to be in, what problem do I want to solve? I feel like that is the way that education should be designed completely. Well, our last question for you is a fun one. What show was groundbreaking to you when you were growing up? And do you still ever watch it or think about it?
I think groundbreaking. That wasn't the question that you guys asked me in the email.
Wait, I think
Totally
I forgot
fair.
to change it on our script.
I'm like, wait, Recess, the show, the cartoon,
Groundbreaking.
groundbreaking. I really did love that show, though. I don't. Did you guys ever watch Recess?
Yes, I loved Recess.
I loved Recess.
I don't know if it was groundbreaking, but I loved it. I think it was just like delightful. And I think I did rewatch it like a few years ago, and I was like, oh, they actually had some more adult themes and times or something. And there was this one episode with Finster, who's like I don't know what her role really is in school, but she's like one of the teachers who like monitors things and like gets people in trouble. But it kind of goes through her life, and it's like, why have I become boring or something. Like, it's like this like existential dilemma she has in who she is as she gets older. Yeah, it's a great show. They don't make them like they used to.
So real. It's just, reminds me of like the beauty of holding on to that childlike wonder to stave off the existential crisis as long as we possibly can. That Recess was telling us that at a young age.
I think so. Groundbreaking, I think.
Yeah, I have so much nostalgia whenever I watch that.
Right?
Good.
What
good
were
and
your
bad.
shows?
Wait, go ahead.
Good and bad. What were your groundbreaking shows?
I wouldn't consider it groundbreaking, I guess, but for some reason I had the DVD of that movie Saved with Mandy Moore, and I watched that so much, and I guess it was sort of implanting in me like the danger of organized religion and the importance of bodily autonomy at a young age. But I don't know why that one was like on repeat for some reason.
That's so funny. That's actually like one of my partner grew up very religious and like always talks about that movie. Like, I think he like watched it so many times in like high school. Yeah.
I think mine, well, okay, this is high school because I didn't find out about Daria until high school, but then as I got older, I was like, damn, Daria's annoying as fuck because like she's white and she just complains about everything. When I was younger, I was like, wow, it's so cool. But then like, I'm like, she just complains and then doesn't do anything about it. She's like, wow, look at this social injustice, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I feel like growing up is realizing that Daria is fucking annoying, but it was still groundbreaking. But yeah, that's probably mine.
That's so funny.
Yeah, people who complain about social problems and don't do anything to fix them, super annoying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. At least like try a little. Then you
Yeah, she always wanted
as possible.
Yeah, she always wanted someone else to do it. She would always tell the black character, Jody, she's like, aren't you going to do something about this? I'm like,
what?
That's real life, actually. Wow. Daria was really just setting us up for real life.
That's true. Wow. Next level. That was groundbreaking.
Just giving you the real talk about white feminism from an early age.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I know I don't know how these podcasts work. I feel like a boomer. But like how did you guys both get into both tech and just socially good tech or reproductive rights?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm new to the tech world. I would say Techies for RJ is actually my first foray into the tech world, and I had a big imposter, feeling of calling myself a techie because didn't know what the terminal on my computer was at all before joining. But I came from a big like nonprofit background, and I was really interested in reproductive justice once I learned about that framework in college. I was like, everything is connected in this, and like the ability to reproduce not only like our own families but like our own communities, our ways of life. And so I was looking for jobs in the reproductive justice world, and I was a sex educator for a lot of years in Louisiana, which so interesting. And then was doing community organizing stuff around like anti-surveillance work in New Orleans, which I got into like kind of happenstance because that was like a tie that the Jewish anti-Zionist group that I was with was making between like Palestine and the technologies that Israel was using in Palestine were the same ones that they were using to surveil people in New Orleans. And yeah, so I was searching for ways to kind of like merge all these interests, and I saw the T for RJ job posting on Repro Jobs. So shout out to them, even though they don't exist anymore, but super useful place for me at the time. Yeah, and feel super lucky to be part of this community because I feel like I've learned so much more about how tech is also so tied to all of these systems of oppression, but is also such an incredible way to build connections and share resources and get people the information that they need, like you're doing with I Need an A.
That's awesome. Yeah. I feel like like the knowledge that you have is invaluable to someone who is less from like a repro background. Like, yeah, I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I
that.
love non-traditional paths to tech. Those are my favorite, and I wish I did that because I want to have that because like it's so much money. It's so much money.
That's so funny.
But the way I came into, I guess, tech is so, my parents are Nigerian, so they were like, oh, you need to be a doctor or something that makes money. And I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. And luckily, I was able to find tech and computers because not everybody's that lucky to find something they like that also makes money. So when I went to university, that's how I got into social justice. Like, so I was already kind of interested, trying to start little groups and stuff in high school. But, like in high school, you're still kind of developing your just everything, like political awareness, finding out about the Black Panthers, finding out about Israel and Palestine, then asking a history teacher, hey, can you tell me about Palestine? He's like, Palestine isn't real. I was like, I'm not going to listen to a white man. So I just went back on Tumblr and was like finding out more like that. And this was like 11th or 12th grade. And then actually finding a group on campus that was doing cool social justice work. From there, finding other student organizing things. At the same time, going to classes for tech and just feeling weird whenever the teacher would say master slave, like, in the tech world or whatever. Just these weird tech terms that have roots in anti-Blackness. Trying to think of some other ones. Like black hat hackers are the bad ones, but then white hats are the good ones. Just things like that, and just feeling like weird. So like while I'm like doing these like two of these things at the same time, doing student organizing and tech, I'm like, there has to be a way to merge this together. And then just finding more people just online, literally Instagram, that were doing the merging of these two things. I'm like, that's super cool. Never would have found this information if I simply just stayed on the path that school was giving. So social media really did help a lot with that too. And like honestly, it was really hard to find a job after I graduated. So I was actually teaching in the Women and Gender Studies program because I actually had a lot of cool teachers and mentors in that area, like more than my actual department. But I was able to actually teach, cool things about tech and race and gender and like media and like queer media and stuff. And finally finding like a job, then job getting acquired, then getting laid off, then finding another job that I didn't necessarily care about, but it was a tech job, and then finally finding this job. So it was like a long journey, but it's like a combination of things, like definitely student organizing and feeling dissatisfaction with education, and also social media, specifically Instagram. Even though I'm not a fan of Instagram right now, it was really helpful with finding people doing the thing that I was like, this has to exist somewhere.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad you like supplemented your education.
Thanks. Yeah, it was hard, but worth it.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder of social media in its nicest form is actually super useful for connecting with people and learning new things and learning about the world in new ways that we're not taught about. And in its worst form is terrible.
Yeah, definitely.
Have y'all read Glitch Feminism?
Mm-mm.
It's by Legacy Russell, I think. I hope
I really want to.
it's good. And it talks about how, like, basically what you just said, Lou, like, tech and social media is a great way to form communities, especially for marginalized people. But at the same time, that tech is surveilling us. It's a really good book if you do get a chance to read it.
Ooh, I'm adding this to my list.
Awesome. I think that was the last question. I do like that we diverted and had other conversations too, though. That's my favorite. But yeah, thank you so much, Nidhi. Like, we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about your tech journey and, your groundbreaking film growing up, or show, your groundbreaking show growing up, just being able to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This was fun.
Oh, we'll see you online.
All right.
Before we close out, we'd love to urge you to donate to ineedana.com. To donate, go to ineedana.com.
Our theme music is Beauty Flow by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. The song is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. This episode was brought to you by Techies for Reproductive Justice, a project of the Digital Defense Fund. Your hosts for today's episode were Lou and Azmare. Thanks to our superbly fantastic editor. Thank you also to Nidhi for such a great conversation. If you liked what you heard today, stay in touch with us by subscribing. Want to become a member of T4RJ or have ideas for future episodes? Check out our website, techies4rj.org, to learn more and send us a message. Again, that's techies4rj.org. Next episode, we are super excited to interview two doulas about their experiences in the reproductive justice and death worlds. And thank you to all of our listeners. We are grateful to be in this movement together. We'll see you on the internet.